the captain, I'm sorry. The captain won't go bleh whenever an iceberg comes across again. You know what I'm saying? Reapers, what's is good? It's your boy Laser. Scary reaction, man. Never good content. So I continue to do whatever's enough. 5 most haunting facts about the Titanic. Guys, that ship sunk years ago. We're not trying to do scary content. We're scary reviews like features still open. You should subscribe to get that notification bell icon. I'll stream on Twitch. I'll stream music at Sideboy. Let's dive straight into this video.
It's been over 105 years since the Titanic's disastrous plummet to the depths of the Atlantic Ocean. However, still to this day, many of the details surrounding the ship's demise still remain unanswered. Number 5. Just weeks before the Titanic's voyage, a conference had been held in Berlin, detailing a new type of distress call, or SOS signal, which was to be standard on all ships moving forward. The Titanic received one of these signals late into the night from a ship by the name of the Californian. The Californian
it's crazy to think that like back then the Titanic was like the biggest fucking well, it was considered like the biggest ship back in the day, but now like it's small compared to every other ship that's like sailing nowadays. Did that big large ship sail yet? I don't fucking know. The Titanic is a ghost town. What was that quote? That Call of Duty quote? 50,000 people used to live here. Now, the Flying Dutchman is probably masturbating in here.
Radioing in to let the Titanic know of an iceberg that was ahead. An iceberg that the Californian had almost crashed into itself. Following this, the Californian decided it would be best to not proceed any further for the evening. However, here's where things get a bit weird. After the Californian signal was sent, they received no response. They decided to send the signal again, and this time the signal was so—
By the way, if you watch my channel, completely random, you're a cool kid. You know that one regular show episode that where you had to like dress up to be cool or whatever? That it was like that cool. You're not cool enough for that cool club or whatever the fuck. There was a regular show was a whole fever dream, man. My back of my hair, oh shit.
So strong, it actually interfered with the Titanic's regular communications. The Californian then received a response to this with a very simple message: "Shut up, I'm busy." Following this, the Californian shut down for the evening and the captain went to bed. It was only minutes later that the Titanic would strike an iceberg and begin to sink. It was noted that at the time of the Titanic's impact, the Californian was just 25 minutes away and was carrying no passengers. Though upon seeing the Titanic's distress flares, the captain and crew of the Californian did nothing, instead choosing to believe that the flares were actually, quote, company signals of some kind. A total of 8 distress calls were launched during the Titanic's nearly 2 hours of sinking.
It's kind of like a butterfly effect. Imagine if the Titanic never crashed. Well, not really a butterfly effect, more like it kind of is. Like, just imagine how different history would be. Maybe the history would be worse if the Titanic didn't sink at the iceberg.
Most of which was launched at 2 a.m. None of the flares were acknowledged by the Californian, though another ship by the name of Carpathia had received the Titanic's distress signals and headed in its direction all night, ultimately arriving around 4 a.m. It was around 5:30 a.m. that the Californian eventually decided to see why the Titanic had fired its rockets, and proceeded in that direction. It had arrived just as the Carpathia had concluded its survivor retrieval mission. On April 19th, the Californian returned to Boston and went almost entirely unnoticed. That is, until the news of its involvement with the Titanic leaked to the press. The captain and crew were then questioned by police, and while the crew's story seemed to line up, the Californian's captain gave numerous conflicting reports, in a blatant attempt to cover up any wrongdoing on his part. He even went as far as to deny ever seeing the Titanic's rockets, though the crew all stated that he was the one that made the call to ignore them. No charges were ever filed.
Just imagine how like that water was freezing as fuck. Hypothermia.
Against the crew or the captain, though many claim that all crew members aboard the Californian should have been tried for murder. But what do you guys think? Were the deaths surrounding the Titanic the fault of the Californian's lack of response, or do you believe that the full responsibility lies with the Titanic's crew who refused to heed the iceberg warnings? Let us know in the comments. However, if you're a bit undecided, let's get to number 4, detailing the many iceberg warnings that the Titanic ignored. Contrary to what would be considered typical with ships nowadays, according to Skygaze, the Titanic sped at 22 knots through a still, motionless night on April 14th. Yet, since 9 a.m. of the day prior, there had been at least 6 iceberg warnings from other ships in the same pathway to North America. First, a radio aboard the Californian alerted the Titanic's captain, E.J. Smith.
Like, this was considered like the biggest ship back in the day. Now it's like nothing compared to like average sized ships.
Who wired back an acknowledgement. Early in the afternoon, an operator on the
split like a pee-pee.
Titanic delivered a specific warning from the Baltic to Smith. Icebergs and large quantities of fields of ice ahead. The captain handed it to J. Bruce Ismay, the managing director of White Star Line, who read it and put it in his pocket without comment. As mentioned previously, at least twice the Californian sent messages. 3 large icebergs was the first warning from the ship's operator, followed by "We are stuck here surrounded by ice." Jack Phillips of the Titanic then replied with his famous phrase, "Shut up, I'm busy." Apparently, Phillips had been also receiving messages for the important passengers aboard the ship. These messages were supposed to be his first priority. In fact, Phillips and other radio operators were employees of a telegraph company. They were technically not members of the White Star crew or the Titanic. Later that night at 9:40 p.m.,
What the fuck?
Saba reported much heavy ice and great number of icebergs ahead, also a field of ice. If officers on the Titanic's bridge actually received this message, which is open for debate, they would have realized instantly the dangers of ice that lay directly ahead of them. Lookouts, which were not even provided with binoculars, had also been warned that ice may be
Oh, the scary music! Oh, Titanic! Looks like batteries, bro. This looks like fucking batteries.
encountered any time after 9:30 p.m. But no icebergs were spotted throughout the evening. And due to the extrememely dark night, lookouts only reported a smooth sea. Though there was an ominous sign of danger. The water temperature had fallen rapidly from 43 degrees.
Bro, I remember I went to like this museum, bro. And I put my finger in like the fucking water. That shit literally felt like goddamn, how do I explain it? Like that's what the Titanic water felt like. It showed like like put your finger in this to feel what the Titanic water felt like. I couldn't even keep my finger in the water for that long. Just imagine keeping your whole body in there. Like I got to feel what the Titanic water felt like. Imagine keeping your whole body in there. I couldn't even keep my finger in there for like 5 seconds. Not even 5 seconds, like less than a second. That's how cold the water was. I couldn't even like touch it. It was, imagine keeping your whole body in there, bro.
Fahrenheit to slightly below freezing in only a few hours, which is always an indication that ice may be floating nearby. Yet
Bro, anyone that's gone under pain, like knows how like when you're under pain, like the panic and like how your thoughts change, you know what I'm saying?
Titanic neither slowed down nor turned away to avoid the danger. Number 3. Now we can make our way to the classic lifeboat dilemma. Why did so few people make it aboard the lifeboats before they departed?
It was like the rich people, right? I forgot.
Many of these boats were not even halfway full, yet they still...
There were some, like, it's crazy to think that, like, some parents, like, got rescued without their kids or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Like, some families, like, not all the members made, you know what I'm saying?
Set sail, leaving hundreds if not thousands to drown in the freezing waters. Just after the ship's impact, which seemed unremarkable at the time, the crew was ordered to uncover all of the lifeboats, strictly as a safety measure. If each boat was filled to the maximum capacity, a total of 1,178 people could have survived the Titanic's wreckage, with others hopefully being rescued by nearby boats. Many people believe that the Titanic was understocked with lifeboats, though this actually isn't true. According to regulations at the time, the Titanic actually only needed enough lifeboats to carry 962 passengers. Though this is actually due to a loophole in the system, as the regulations had not been properly prepared to suit the needs of a ship the size of the Titanic. This, in combination with the fact that the Titanic was widely deemed unsinkable, led to the ship being dramatically ill-prepared for disaster. In fact, many of the lifeboats that were placed aboard the Titanic did not even have the proper amount of food, water, or signal flares. Additionally, many of the passengers and crew aboard the Titanic were never drilled on how exactly to properly evacuate the boat, leading to mass confusion when the need arose. However, this still doesn't explain why so few people were packed aboard the lifeboats, as it's been reported that many of the boats had their maximum capacities literally...
Nowadays, bro, like what? There's like 50 million lifeboats on a ship. So, like, whenever a ship does sink, it's not going to be, like, the same situation again, you know what I'm saying? There's so much lifeboats, you got phones, everything, communication's easier, navigation, GPS. The pilot, or the captain, I'm sorry. The captain won't go bleh whenever an iceberg comes across again. You know what I'm saying?
Clearly written on the side. Because of this, many assume that most of the lives lost on that day were due to gross negligence, or even possibly a larger conspiracy. But the fact is, we'll likely never know. Number 2. According to the Smithsonian Magazine, the Titanic's impact with an iceberg may not have been the only reason for the ship sinking. In fact, it's actually been reported that a massive fire broke out near the hull just weeks before the ship was due to depart. According to an Irish journalist, as well as multiple eyewitness testimonies, a fire had broken out in a coal bunker of the ship, which caused the hull to be dramatically weakened. According to Sean Maloney, the Titanic was a single-skinned ship, meaning that it only had one single hull, which was typical of ships for this time period. Because of this, it's very likely that when the fire broke out, it weakened the strength and structural integrity of the ship, causing its hull to be dangerously fragile. According to Maloney, this information only recently came out as he was investigating photographs taken during the ship's construction. The photos were taken by the ship's engineering team, which were later stored in a private party's attic, never to be seen again for nearly 100 years. Upon examining the photos, Maloney was extremely shocked to see that a large black streak had been documented on the outside of the Titanic's hull, close to where the iceberg would have eventually struck. Maloney then took this photo to a team of engineers at a London college, who concluded that the most likely explanation for the streak was a fire. Maloney concluded that the fire was likely never ducked, as it would have invited bad.
Would y'all like this for like $1 billion? Would y'all like this for like $1 billion?
Bad press and likely caused hysteria among the ship's future occupants, resulting in a massive loss of funds. It's widely reported that the construction of the Titanic was already being rushed in order to compete with the Germans for means of valuable immigrant trade. Because of this, the Titanic was likely only partially repaired, the outer parts of the hull replaced or cleaned, and the disaster never spoken of again. Number 1. Another conspiracy that many people seem to be
Because you think that like this will never happen again. Basically.
on board with is that the Titanic may not have actually been the Titanic. In fact, it was switched with its sister ship, the Olympic, and purposefully sunk in a massive insurance scam. Back in September of 1911, the Olympic made impact with the HMS Hawk and caused significant damage to the Olympic's, you guessed it, hull. Had the White Star Line
I remember I watched the movie and I was like,
company proceeded with repairs, it would have cost them millions and would have pushed back the launch date of the Titanic from March 20th to April 10th. And as mentioned previously, this simply couldn't happen due to the ship's race with the Germans, though this ended up being unavoidable in the end. So the White Star Line devised a plan: swap out the Olympic and the Titanic, change the nameplates, and only slightly repair the Olympic's hull so that it was at least usable, then take it out to sea and stage an unintentional crash. This would allow the White
wait, what the fuck?
avoidable in the end. So the White Star Line devised a plan: swap out the Olympic and the Titanic, repair the Olympic's hull so that it was at least an unintentional crash. This would allow the White Star Line to claim the entirety of the Olympics or Titanic's value as an insurance payment, resulting in almost zero funds being lost due to the Olympics crash. The two ships looked almost identical, so the plan seemed to be foolproof. Now, this may sound absolutely insane. However, there's actually photo
I played Roblox Titanic. I stayed on the ship. I survived the Titanic. They should put me in the I Survived book. I survived the Titanic. I survived the Roblox Titanic. My Robloxian body did not touch the water. My Robloxian body did not go
evidence to back up these claims. If you take a look at the photos you see on screen, you can see that the Olympic had been previously photographed with elongated rectangular windows. The Titanic, on the other hand, was always designed with square windows. Now, take a look at the ship that lies at the bottom of the ocean. Rectangular windows.
It's crazy like how only pieces of the Titanic remain now.
Also, if you take a look at the Titanic while it's being built, there are some additional discrepancies. The Titanic was designed with a 14-port hull, and if you take a look at the Titanic lettering, the letter T is lined up about halfway between two of the holes. However, now look at the Titanic that eventually departed. It has 16 portholes, and the letter T is almost perfectly underneath the third porthole.
Well, because this was maybe we enjoyed it. Which one of those haunting facts of Titanic was most interesting to you?